You've been praying, maybe for years, but deep down, something still feels off. You say the words, but peace doesn't come. Healing feels far. And God, he feels silent. But here's the truth no one tells you. Jesus didn't just teach us to pray. He taught us how to pray, step by step. And what he revealed isn't just a set of words. It's a spiritual map, a divine blueprint that can unlock peace, freedom, clarity, and power in your life. In this video, I'm going to walk you through the way Jesus prayed, not a theory, not tradition, but his way, as recorded in the Gospels. And I promise you, once you learn this, your prayer life will never be the same. Let's begin right where Jesus begins, not with a list of requests, not with your problems, not with "Dear God, help me." No, he starts with one radical, transformational shift in posture. Our Father in heaven, hallowed be your name. Matthew 6 verse 9. Before anything else, Jesus teaches us to pause and recognize who we're speaking to, not a vending machine for blessings, not a distant force in the sky, but a Father, a holy, mighty, present Father. And that word, hallowed, it means sacred. It means revered. It means we stop and acknowledge. This moment is holy ground. Think about it. Moses wasn't told to speak first. He was told to remove his sandals. Why? Because he was in the presence of something so pure, so utterly set apart, that even dirt had to be acknowledged as sacred. That's what Jesus is telling you here. Before you say anything, recognize the weight of who is listening. This is where transformation begins. Because when you start with reverence, everything else changes. Your fears shrink. Your priorities shift. Your requests come into focus under the light of God's glory. So here's how you begin. Stop, breathe, say, "God, you are holy. You are worthy. I worship you for who you are." Don't rush this part. Don't treat it like the intro to get through. This is a foundation. And when you start with worship, you're no longer praying from desperation. You're praying from alignment. When you make this shift, something happens. You're not begging for attention. You're standing in sacred confidence. You're not starting from lack. You're starting from the overflow of God's presence. This is not about praying harder. It's about praying right. It's about praying like Jesus did. Once you've entered prayer with reverence, not just saying God, but standing before him as Father and holy, Jesus takes us deeper. He gives us the next words. Your kingdom come, your will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Matthew 6 verse 10. Now pause. Don't rush past this. These aren't just poetic phrases. This is a spiritual realignment. This is where most people get prayer completely wrong. Because here's what most of us do. We enter prayer already carrying our plans, our timeline, our version of how things should go. We pray hoping to convince God to do what we want. But Jesus flips that entirely. He teaches us that real prayer is about surrender, not strategy. It's not about getting God to join your plan. It's about laying your plan down to step into his. And let's be honest, surrender sounds beautiful in theory, but terrifying in practice. Because what if God's will leads you somewhere uncomfortable? What if it means waiting longer than you wanted? What if it costs you control? This is where faith is tested. And this is where peace is born. Think of Jesus himself. In the Garden of Gethsemane, just hours before the cross, he falls to his knees. The pressure is so intense. He sweats blood. And what does he pray? "Father, if it's possible, let this cup pass from me. But not my will, yours." Matthew 26 verse 39. Even Jesus, the Son of God, wrestled in that moment. He asked for a different way, but he chose surrender. And through that surrender came salvation. That's not weakness. That's divine strength. That's trust at the deepest level. Now apply this to your life. Maybe you're praying for a relationship to be restored, a door to open, an answer to come. And maybe you're asking from a place of desperation, "God, do this, fix this, change this." But what if the breakthrough isn't on the other side of control, but surrender? What if peace comes not from getting your way, but from letting go and trusting his way? This isn't easy, but here's how to pray it. "Father, I don't see the full picture, but you do. I surrender my plan. I surrender my timing. I surrender my version of the outcome. Your kingdom come. Your will be done in this situation, in my heart, in my future, just as it is in heaven." When you pray like that, you're no longer a prisoner to outcomes. You're not chasing control. You're choosing trust. And something changes in the atmosphere when you do. God's kingdom isn't just a place you go to after death. It's a reality that invades earth when hearts align with heaven. And when you say, "Your will be done," you are giving God permission to bring heaven into your now. That's not weak. That's not passive. That's the boldest kind of prayer you can pray. Now that Jesus has taught us to begin with worship and surrender, he moves into what most people think prayer is all about, asking for what we need. But notice something. He doesn't say, "Give us what we want." He doesn't say, "Give us enough for the next year." He says, "Give us this day our daily bread." Matthew 6 verse 11. This is one of the most radical truths hidden in plain sight. Jesus is teaching us to trust God for today. Why is that so powerful? Because for most of us, prayer is rooted in tomorrow. God, how am I going to pay that bill next month? God, what if this job doesn't work out? God, when will the right person come into my life? We're constantly praying from a place of projected fear, future-based anxiety. But Jesus pulls us back into the now. He says, focus on today. Trust me with this moment. To understand this, you have to go back to the desert, to Exodus 16. The Israelites were wandering through the wilderness, and they were hungry. They didn't know where their next meal would come from. And God sent manna, bread from heaven. But there was one condition. They could only gather enough of that day. If they tried to store more for the next morning, it would rot. Maggots. Spoiled. Gone. Why? Because God wasn't just feeding them. He was training them, teaching them to depend on Him daily. Not weekly, not in bulk, daily. And that's what Jesus is doing here. He's not just telling you to ask for what you need. He's teaching you to trust God for what you need right now. Not next month. Not 5 years from now. Today. Why does this matter? Because anxiety thrives in the future. It feeds on the what-ifs. What if I lose the job? What if the diagnosis gets worse? What if I'm alone forever? But God doesn't promise strength for tomorrow today. He gives you strength for today. And when tomorrow comes, He'll meet you there too. This is how you pray it. Lord, today I need your peace. Today I need wisdom for this meeting. Today I need strength to get through this grief. Today I need grace for my kids. Today, just today, I need you. And do you know what happens when you pray that way? You stop drowning in the weight of the future. You start breathing again. You start walking lighter, trusting deeper. Because prayer isn't just asking. It's a daily declaration of dependence. This part of Jesus' prayer reminds you that you are not your own provider. God is. He always has been. And when you begin to believe that, not just say it, but believe it, something shifts inside of you. Worry loses its grip. Control starts to break. Trust takes root. So today, stop obsessing over a future you can't control. Stand still, look up, and say, Father, thank you for the bread of today. It's enough. You're enough. You've worshiped. You've surrendered your will. You've trusted God for today. But now Jesus takes a turn most people avoid, a turn that's essential if you truly want breakthrough. And forgive us our debts, as we also have forgiven our debtors. Matthew 6, verse 12. This isn't a soft request. It's a heart check, a mirror, because now Jesus is not just asking you to receive something. He's asking you to give something. And it's one of the hardest things to give. Forgiveness. Let's be honest. You've been hurt, maybe deeply, by a parent who abandoned you, a friend who betrayed your trust, a partner who broke your heart. And even though you may have moved on externally, that wound, it's still open. That name still triggers something inside. That memory still replays like a loop that never ends. And here's what few people are willing to admit. That kind of pain, if left unaddressed, becomes a spiritual clog. It blocks your prayers from flowing freely. It suffocates your joy. It creates a barrier between you and the peace you've been praying for. Jesus doesn't just suggest forgiveness. He builds it into the foundation of how to pray. He's saying, you can't receive the fullness of grace while withholding it from someone else. It's not punishment. It's protection. Go deeper with this. In Matthew 18, Jesus tells a parable about a servant who owed his king an unimaginable debt, the kind of number you couldn't pay off in 10 lifetimes. The king, moved with mercy, forgave the entire thing. But that same servant went out and found someone who owed him a tiny amount. And instead of extending mercy, he choked him, demanded repayment, and had him thrown in prison. When the king found out, he was furious. He revoked the forgiveness. He called the servant wicked. Why? Because it's outrageous to receive mercy and then refuse to extend it. Because forgiveness isn't just about the other person. It's about the condition of your heart. So here's the hard truth. Unforgiveness is a form of spiritual self-harm. It doesn't protect you. It poisons you. It keeps you bound to the very thing you wish would go away. And maybe you're thinking, but you don't know what they did. And you're right, I don't. But God does. And He's not asking you to excuse it. He's asking you to release it. Not for their sake. For yours. Because when you forgive, you're not saying what you did was okay. You're saying what you did no longer has power over me. You are choosing freedom over bitterness. Healing over hatred. Peace over poison. So how do you pray this? With brutal honesty. God, I'm struggling. I don't want to forgive, but I know I need to. Help me. Heal me. I release this person to you. I let go of revenge. I choose mercy, not because they deserve it, but because you gave it to me first. And in that prayer, something breaks. The chains loosen. The air clears. And you begin to feel what you thought was gone forever. Peace. This is the part of prayer we want to skip. but it's the key to unlocking everything else. Because a heart that forgives is a heart God can flow through freely. You've worshiped the Father. You've surrendered your will. You've trusted Him for today's provision. You've released the weight of unforgiveness. Now Jesus turns your attention to the battlefield, the place most people ignore until it's too late. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Matthew 6 verse 13. This is where prayer becomes warfare, because whether you realize it or not, every single day you are stepping into a spiritual battleground, not with swords and shields, but with whispers, with thoughts, with distractions, with desires. Temptation doesn't scream, it seduces. It doesn't always show up in obvious evil. It often hides in compromise, in delay, in comfort, in pride. And the truth is, many people lose this battle not because they're evil, but because they think they're strong enough to fight it alone. Jesus knew better. This part of the prayer is Jesus telling you, don't rely on willpower. Rely on God's power. Temptation is too subtle, too relentless, too cunning. You can't outmuscle it. You can't outrun it. You can only overcome it through Him. Let me take you to Genesis 39. Joseph, betrayed by his brothers, sold into slavery, working in Potiphar's house, is suddenly faced with a temptation most men would collapse under. Potiphar's wife comes after him, boldly, repeatedly, day after day. But Joseph doesn't try to manage the situation. He doesn't pray in the moment for strength. He runs. He flees so fast he leaves his cloak behind. Why? Because Joseph wasn't just running from sin. He was running toward integrity. He had already made up his mind. I'd rather lose my position than lose my purpose. And that's what this line of the prayer is about. Preparing your heart before the trap even shows up. It's not a prayer of fear. It's a prayer of positioning. It's saying, God, I know my weakness. I know my patterns. I know the enemy's tactics. Let me away from the places that feed my flesh. Pull me out before I fall in. You don't have to fall to rise again. You can choose the path that prevents the fall, and prayer is how you step into that path. And notice the second part. Deliver us from evil. This isn't vague. Jesus is acknowledging that evil is real, that darkness is active, that there are forces at work trying to destroy peace, joy, identity, and destiny. But here's the good news. God is not just your creator. He is your defender. He doesn't just forgive your sins. He fights your battles. You were never meant to face temptation alone. You were never meant to wrestle evil in your own strength. So how do you pray this? Father, lead me today. Keep me away from places, people, and situations that weaken my spirit. Deliver me from every plan of the enemy, the ones I see and the ones I don't. Be my shield. Be my strength. Help me choose what honors you, even when no one's watching. This is a prayer of preparation, a prayer of humility, a prayer of protection. It's a cry of someone who knows, I can't win this battle without you, but with you I cannot lose. And when you pray like that, you don't just survive the day, you conquer it. Ready to go deeper? The next part of Jesus' teaching flips everything the religious world misunderstood about prayer. It's not about the stage. It's not about sounding holy. It's about what happens when no one is watching. You've made it this far in Jesus' teaching, worshiping the Father, surrendering your plans, trusting Him daily, releasing forgiveness, and praying for protection in battle. But now He brings us into something so countercultural, so opposite to everything the world tells us about spirituality, that most people overlook it completely. But when you pray, go into your room, close the door and pray to your Father, who is unseen. Then your Father, who sees what is done in secret, will reward you. Matthew 6 verse 6. This is where Jesus separates real prayer from religious performance. Because let's be honest, we live in a time where everything is shared. Every moment, every thought, every good deed. We post our faith. We tweet our convictions. We even go live when we worship. And while none of that is inherently wrong, Jesus is pointing to something far deeper, far more intimate and far more powerful. The secret place is not a metaphor. It's not an outdated ritual. It's the very core of authentic relationship with God. Think about this. The Son of God, with all power, all authority, all glory, regularly withdrew to lonely places to pray. No crowd, no noise, no disciples taking notes. Just silence, just solitude, just the Father. And yet today, many believers can quote prayers in public, but barely whisper to God in private. Jesus isn't condemning public prayer. He's calling us back to the source of power, the private altar. Let me take you to Daniel 6 verse 10. Daniel is a man of influence, a man respected by kings. But when a decree is passed outlawing prayer to anyone but the king, punishable by death, Daniel doesn't panic. He doesn't rally a protest. He doesn't go live on scroll media. He goes to his room. He opens a window toward Jerusalem. And he does what he always did. He prays, not to be seen, but because he had already built his life on what no one else saw. That's the point. The reward doesn't come from being noticed. It comes from being known. And your Father sees what happens in the dark, in the quiet, in the places where you choose Him when no one else is watching. That's where fire falls. That's where healing happens. That's where clarity returns. That's where peace grows roots. So what does this mean for you? It means you need a place, not a grand sanctuary, not a perfect atmosphere, just a place where heaven knows this is where we meet. It could be your bedroom with the door closed. It could be a walk in the woods. It could be your car before the sun comes up. What matters is that it's hidden, set apart, sacred. Here's how you enter that space. Father, I'm here, not to perform, not to impress, not even to be productive. I'm here because I miss you. I want to hear your voice again. Speak. I'm listening. The secret place is where religion dies and relationship is reborn. It's where your faith becomes real. It's where you stop trying to be close to God and realize you already are. So ask yourself, when was the last time you closed the door, shut off the noise, silence, and performance, and just met with your Father? Because what happens in secret will shape who you are in public. By now, Jesus has led us through sacred territory, deeper into reverence, surrender, trust, forgiveness, protection, and intimacy with the Father in the secret place. But just when you think you've grasped the rhythm of true prayer, Jesus drops a truth that slices through centuries of religious pretense. And when you pray, do not heap up empty phrases as the Gentiles do, for they think they will be heard for their many words. Matthew 6, verse 7. Let that sink in. Jesus isn't just correcting how much people say. He's exposing the why behind their words. Because there's a trap we fall into without even noticing. The belief that our eloquence earns God's attention. It's a lie of religious performance, that if we say it the right way, if we cry loud enough, repeat the right verses, or use spiritual language, God will finally act. But Jesus cuts through that illusion like a blade through mist. God is not impressed by volume. He is moved by honesty. You don't need perfect grammar to touch heaven. You don't need spiritual poetry. You don't need to sound like someone else. You just need to be real. Let me show you the contrast. In 1 Samuel 1, we meet a woman named Hannah. She's barren, broken, desperate, and she doesn't walk into the temple with a scripted prayer. She weeps. She trembles. Her lips move, but no sound comes out. So raw, so undone, the priest thinks she's drunk. But God didn't misread her. He saw her heart. And that prayer, silent, messy, wordless, was the one He answered. Why? Because honesty is the native language of heaven. Too often, we wear masks in prayer, as if God can't handle the real version of us. We hide the doubt. We soften the anger. We dilute the heartbreak. We recite what we think He wants to hear. But God doesn't want your performance. He wants you. Prayer is not a courtroom argument to win His favor. It's a table set for communion, for conversation, for presence. And sometimes the most powerful prayer sounds like, God, I don't have the words today. I'm tired. I'm angry. I feel far from you. But I'm here. That is holy. That is worship. That moves heaven. Remember this. God is not grading your prayers. He's gathering your heart. The most earth-shaking, hell-breaking, chain-snapping prayers are often whispered in tears, groaned in silence, or spoken through cracked voices in the middle of the night. This is how you pray it. Father, strip away the filters. I don't want to impress you. I want to know you. Hear the parts of me I can't even say out loud. And meet me there. You don't have to shout to be heard. You don't have to be articulate to be understood. You just have to be honest. Because God isn't waiting for your perfection. He's waiting for your permission to come close in your truth. And when He does, everything changes. So far, Jesus has stripped prayer down to its core. Worship, surrender, dependence, forgiveness, protection, intimacy, honesty. But now He reveals the force that fuels it all. The spark that ignites your words and sends them crashing against the gates of heaven with unstoppable force. And whatever you ask in prayer, believing, you will receive. Matthew 21, verse 22. Believing, that's the word. Not reciting, not begging, not repeating. Believing, because prayer without faith is like fire without oxygen. It flickers, but it won't burn. It speaks, but it doesn't move mountains. Jesus isn't telling you to wish harder. He's not asking you to visualize positive outcomes. He's inviting you into a spiritual transaction where your belief becomes a currency of the supernatural. And belief isn't just mental agreement. It's anchored trust. It's your soul planting a flag on God's promise and refusing to retreat, even when the storm is raging. Let me show you what that looks like in real life. In Matthew 9, there's a woman who has been bleeding for 12 years. 12 years of pain. 12 years of rejection. 12 years of doctors, disappointment, shame, isolation. But one day, she hears Jesus is passing by. No appointment, no invitation, just a window of grace. And she doesn't say, if I ask nicely, maybe He'll notice me. She doesn't wait for permission. She pushes through the crowd, unseen, uninvited, and reaches the edge of his cloak. And here's what she's saying in her heart. If I can just touch his garment, I'll be healed. Not maybe, not hopefully. I will. And in that moment, Jesus stops, surrounded by crowds, pressed on every side. He stops and says, "Who touched me?" Because that touch wasn't casual. It was loaded with faith, and heaven felt it. Then he looks at her, trembling, exposed, and says the words she never thought she'd hear. "Daughter, your faith has made you whole." Did you catch that? It wasn't the cloth. It wasn't the method. It was the faith. Now apply that to your life. You prayed before. Maybe you prayed 1,000 times. But did you believe, not just that God could, but that he would? Did you cling to his word like a lifeline in the dark? Did you speak your prayer with the expectation that heaven would move? Because here's the uncomfortable truth. We often pray with more doubt than faith. We hedge our prayers. We include escape clauses. God, I'm asking, but only if it's your will, and I'll understand if not. Jesus didn't pray like that, and he didn't teach us to. Now, this doesn't mean you treat God like a genie. It doesn't mean you demand your desires. It means you learn to anchor your prayers in his promises. Because faith doesn't begin with your feelings. It begins with his word. So how do you pray in faith? You speak with authority rooted in trust. Father, I believe you hear me. I believe you are working, even if I don't see it yet. I believe your word is true, and I'm holding on to it until breakthrough comes. And then you keep praying. You keep standing. You keep believing. Because when faith enters the room, doubt loses its voice. When faith speaks, fear retreats. When faith touches heaven, heaven responds. And here's the mystery. Faith doesn't just change your circumstances. It changes you. It shifts your posture. It rebuilds your hope. It reintroduces you to a God who still heals, still saves, still provides, still parts seas and raises the dead. Faith isn't wishful thinking. It's spiritual sight, seeing what God has said before it manifests and trusting him enough to keep walking until it does. You walk through prayer as Jesus taught it, worshiping, surrendering, trusting, forgiving, protecting your heart, seeking God in secret, speaking with honesty and believing with fire. But now Jesus makes a statement that seems almost confusing. For your Father knows what you need before you ask him. Matthew 6 verse 8. Wait, pause there. If God already knows, then why should you even pray? Why speak what he already sees? Why ask for what he's already aware of? Because this isn't about information. It's about relationship. Let's make this personal. If you're a parent, or if you've ever deeply loved someone, you know this truth. You often know what they need before they tell you. You can read it in their eyes, hear it in their silence, feel it in the way they move. But you still want them to come to you, not because you need to be informed, but because they need to be known. Because intimacy isn't built through observation. It's built through invitation. Prayer is where heaven meets your humanity. It's where eternity invades your Tuesday morning, where the creator of galaxies leans in to hear your whisper, where the same God who carved mountains and split seas pauses to meet with you. Jesus didn't give you a prayer to memorize. He gave you a way to live, a rhythm, a heartbeat, a blueprint for communion. Let's look back. You begin with worship. Hallowed be your name. You surrendered his will. Your kingdom come. You trust him for today. Give us this day our daily bread. You walk in forgiveness, giving and receiving grace. You seek his protection. Deliver us from evil. You retreat into secrecy, not to hide, but to be fully seen. You abandon performance and choose honesty. You pray with faith, the bold kind that moves mountains. You ask even though he knows, because that's how relationship grows. You cover your prayer in gratitude, remembering what he's done. You learn to persist when answers delay. And you declare his word over your life like a warrior wielding a sword. This is not a religion. This is not practice. This is not tradition. This is communion, face to face, breath to breath, spirit to spirit. You don't pray to get something. You pray to become someone. More whole, more aware, more aligned with heaven. And when you live this way, your prayer life stops being reactive. It becomes proactive. It stops being emotional survival and becomes spiritual transformation. You'll start to notice your language shifting, your mindset clearing, your heart softening, your fears losing grip, your choices aligning, not because you tried harder, but because you've been with the Father. This is the invitation Jesus left us with, not to say a few words and move on, but to build a life that breathes prayer as its language. So now, as we close, let's not just talk about it. Let's pray it together. Final prayer. Father, thank you. Thank you for teaching me to pray, not like the world, but like Jesus. Thank you for listening, even when I've had no words. Thank you for being present in the silence, the struggle, the waiting. Today I come before you, not to perform, but to connect. I declare your name as holy. I surrender my plans to your will. I trust you for what I need today. I release those who hurt me, I receive your mercy in full. Protect me from what I cannot see. Strengthen me for what I must face. Help me walk in truth, not fear, in power, not pride, in peace, not pressure. Let your word shape my prayers. Let my prayers shift my reality. Let your presence define my days. Because I am not praying to a distant God. I am speaking to my Father, and I believe you are near, always, even now. In Jesus' name, amen. If this message moved you, take one more step. Click like, subscribe so you don't miss the next word God has for you. And tap the video that's appearing on your screen right now. There's more waiting for you. This is only the beginning. See you there.